Hello and welcome to the first edition of the ASCA Weekly Podcast. I am your host, Charles Fallon, author of the Fallon Corner Weekly Edition articles that we publish on the ASCA website. And I am joined by the ASCA's play-by-play lead commentator, Nic Douglas. How's it going, Nic?
Not too bad here. I'm just ready to shoot this first episode of the podcast in the comfort of my own home. Let me tell you, I can't wait for this pandemic to be over with and whenever we can get back to the studio.
Yes, sir. It's been a long 4-year pandemic, but we are ready to go for the 2024 season next week. But I would be remiss if I did not cover a couple of things before we get into the action. If you are interested in buying any replica diecasts to the ones that you see that are going to hit the track for the 10th Modern Era Ajax Cup season, the Speedweeks, head on over to circlebdiecast.com or planbsales.com. And for any order over $20, you can get free shipping with the promo code ASCA. And let's also shout out another one of the sports premier partners, Rowdy Energy. Use the affiliate link on the ASCA's link tree to shop at Rowdy Energy and get one of their tasty energy drinks. So, enough chat about the ASCA's premier sport partners, a great new addition to the sport. Let's get into the podcast topics for this week's edition. So we got the Intel shootout coming out in 2 weeks, and there's a lot of things that we need to cover, of course. I think the number one really name that's been going around the ASCA recently, the talk of the town throughout even the off season, for his performance towards the end of last year, has been Laquan Scranson. Obviously, he's been making waves with his antics on and off the racetrack. We know what he did to wreck Diego Orti for his first career win in the Apple 225. Then he followed it up with the last lap pass on Chris Barrymore in the Fastenal 200. Youngest driver to ever win back-to-back races. Just 21 years of age. He just turned a month ago. He's already got 2 Cup wins, a Craftsman Championship, Rookie of the Year. Nic, I'm going to let you take it away first. What do you expect out of the 21-year-old heading into the 2024 campaign?
Well, I got to be honest with you, Charles. I wasn't very high on Laquan Scranson when he came into the Ajax Cup Series for his rookie season. He is obviously in a lot of trouble off the track, and he's also on a team, Dexter Andrews Motorsports, that has really not been very successful in the Cup Series with guys like Derek Lewis and Ryan Braun and, even Dexter Andrews himself. They all have struggled. So I figured that Laquan Scranson was coming into a situation to fail. And what I saw in 2023 was some amazing talent behind that 42 car. Scranson, I never would have guessed Scranson would have even won a race at the age that he is. And he went and won back-to-back races. He looks like a great driver, but he has that, he still has the issues getting into multiple incidents per race. He gets in the shenanigans off the track. And I really think that if he can cut down on and just focus on racing, set wrapping aside for the off season and not let these little on-track feuds make him want to go shoot somebody in the garage. If he can cut back on all that, I think he's got great potential to make Dexter Andrews Motorsports what Snoots Enterprises is right now. Scranson, like I said, showed a ton of potential last year. I don't think anyone saw him winning 2 races last year in that 42 car. And like I said, if he can just cut out all the off-track drama and even the on-track drama, he gets involved in way too many incidents, tear up less cars, make less enemies. We could be looking at the next superstar of the Ajax Cup Series. And I think next year, he's got to win 2 races again to show that last year wasn't a fluke. He's got to back it up.
I 100% agree with that, Nic. Dexter Andrews obviously has invested a lot into Laquan. They have him signed under contract for the next decade plus, literally through the
And yeah,
2034 season.
and I forgot to mention that they better have a plan to keep him out of trouble if they're going to sign him for that long of a contract, because there were a couple close calls last season.
Exactly. Who could forget his infamous incident with Chris Barrymore? In the garage area, he ends up getting arrested midway
Exactly.
through the race. Um, he obviously had, some incidents earlier in the season with his little run Dustin with Diego Urquidy. And he just came out of the slammer just a few weeks ago for his drive-by incident of Urquidy back in 2022. So Dexter Andrews, he has this number 16 car in the Craftsman Series, trying to get Scranton some more on-track experience. We'll see if that pays off. We'll see if it works out. But Scranton will certainly be a big star to watch. Potentially the ASCA's next big thing that all team owners have been looking for a long time.
Yeah,
Now,
I agree with you there. I think he really has the ceiling of a Greg Healy. He's just got to focus on racing. And I think the plan to get him in some more Craftsman races, get him in some simulator time, slowly all that off track stuff that he's involved in that gets him in trouble will hopefully go away.
exactly. Now, moving on to the next topic, it's another, controversial hot button, big time figure in the ASCA. We can't hold an ASCA weekly podcast without talking about Diego Urquidy. And obviously, arguably the most successful driver of the modern era, 23 career wins, 3 Ajax Cup championships, but he's coming off of a quote unquote down season. I say that in air quotes, for his standards at least. First time that he did not win multiple races in a season since 2015. Think about that. Pretty crazy. Finished only fourth in points. And he had a realistic shot at the championship had he held on to win the Apple 225. But of course, we all know the incident between him and Scranson, and then the incident between him and Ayers. But we saw, throughout the course of the second half of last season, Urquidy really started to change his ways. It seems like he's starting to grow up a bit. He's now married. Obviously he already has kids that he's taking care of, but he's in a relationship now, and it seems like he's getting therapy. He's starting to cool down a bit. Nick, I have to ask you, do you think this more relaxed version of Diego Urquidy will be more conducive to him having a big bounce back season and getting back to winning multiple races this year?
Well, first off, I don't think Diego Urquidy had much of a down year last year. Sure, for his standards, he did, but he still finished fourth in points. He should have had 2 wins. Like you said, he should have won in the Apple 225. But yes, I think that next year, if Diego Urquidy can continue this, I'd say matured driving style where he's not getting mad at everyone over the radio, he's not getting mad at his crew. He's starting to take blame for incidents, something that he would never do 2 seasons ago. I think that if he continues that kind of driving, I think he might be the championship favorite next year. He still looked very impressive last year, even though he only won 1 race. He was very consistent, and that's what led him to his 4th place points finish. And if he can just, I think if he can stay out of all these incidents that he was getting himself in, like he caused at least 50% of them. And if he wasn't the cause of it, he would turn around and do something back next week. If you can cut all of that out, Urquidy could finish every single race this next season, because a lot of the incidents, unless it's a plate track, a lot of the incident, and he even still causes a lot of plate incidents, but still, if he can really cut out all the incidents, and he could have potentially one of the best seasons ever. I think next year is Urquidy's breakout year. He's just got to continue to control himself like he showed last season. I was very proud of him for doing this, because a lot of people are going to remember Urquidy as, the hothead, the guy that wrecked everybody and was the dirty driver when he goes into the Hall of Fame. It's no question that he's going into the Hall of Fame. But whenever you look, all these stats get forgotten because of the way he drives. And I think that him really, going to these therapy things and getting everything worked out and becoming a lot more mature is really going to help him as a driver. And I think that will make him, I'd say he's my championship pick next year. 2 seasons ago, my bias would not allow me to pick him to win the championship. And I think there's a lot of other ASCA fans that agree with that. But if he can show what he did in the second half last year, he's going to be up at the front a lot. And if he is guys like Jared Ayers and Laquan Scranson not wanting to wreck him every week, and he's not changing crews every 2 weeks because he fires them, it's going to be tough to beat that guy next year.
110%. Like you said, a more mature Urquidy is a dangerous thought for the field because early on in the modern era, Urquidy, you just used to be able to bully everyone, wreck people at will. If he didn't like you, he was going to wreck you, and he would be able to win races that way. But last year, it seemed like it finally came back to bite him a little bit. And, it is a good thing that he did make the attempt to change his ways because I think long term, it certainly would have cost him if he didn't.
Yeah, exactly. I can agree with that. And, he's still got, I'd say, well, how old is he exactly?
He is 33 right now.
33. So he's probably still got 3 or 4 seasons of, I'd say this is a guess, of course. I'd say he's at least got 3 seasons left of peak level performance. And if he can, like you said, change his driving style like he did in the second half last year, he could win 2 more championships. And he could be up there at the end of his career for the best ASCA driver of all time if this really works out for him. Now, if he goes back to bullying everyone, I don't really know if I think we're going to see a repeat of what we saw last season because these young guns aren't putting up with it like the older ones would. Like you said, that he would come in and bully everyone, but now you got guys like Laquan Scranson and Jared Ayers who aren't going to take it. They're just going to wreck them back. And I feel like there's other drivers in the field that feel the same way because they've put up with this for so long that they're just tired of it. And yeah, I just think that this was a great move for him to get this changed around towards the end of his career. And, next year he might be stat padding. He might be ahead so much in the points.
Exactly. That's a very, very good point. Now transitioning to another veteran driver, another big name, way up there in terms of ASCA all-time greats, modern era greats for sure. That being Randall Woods. And it's crazy to think of Woods as a veteran, considering he's always been that young prodigy, the son of Ronnie Woods, always in his dad's shadow. But he's getting very, very close to overcoming that. Of course, he has the 2 championships now. He won the Northern 200 in 2017, and just last year, he finally conquered the Ajax 200 in his 10th try. But as I just mentioned, he's old now. He's 36. He's the second oldest full-time driver on the tour right now. And my question for you, Nick, is how much longer do you think he'll be able to go? Because, he had a really great year last year at age 35 that, especially after his 2022 season where he went winless, to come back and win 3 races at his age, very impressive. But do you think he'll be able to repeat that at 36 in 2024?
Well, let's remember the start of how 2023 went. I thought there was no way that anyone was winning the championship except for Randall Woods. He came out of the gates firing. He, of course, did slow down in the second half, as you mentioned, but, not all that was his fault. He had a lot of issues with just like his car, like example in the Fast on 200, he blew up like 10 laps in. That's out of his control. He had a lot of issues that were out of his control, but he definitely was not the same Randall Woods as he was in the first half of the season regardless of those issues. In my opinion, age is just a number. Randall Woods at 35 last year, won 3 races, still led over 300 laps. He had 12 top 10s, and he just won the title 3 years ago. So I don't expect to see a different Randall Woods next year. I expect him to see him win 2 or 3 races again, be very competitive, and have a shot at the championship when we head to Belltown at the end of the season. I really don't see, him falling off yet. I do think that he will pass his father in all-time wins. I think he's only about 6 away, but I don't know if he's ever going to win the Windows 300. I had always had a feeling in me that he would get the Ajax 200 just because of how well he ran in that race for so many years. But the Windows 300, he has really struggled, and when he's done well, something has always gone wrong. And it would be an awesome story for him to finally win that race. But as you say, of him slowing down, I just don't see it yet. Last year he was still really good in that first half of the season, and his age only went up by one. Now, if he went, let's say 2022, he went winless. 2023, he had a similar season like that. Yeah, I'd be questioning. It might be time for this guy to retire. That's what we saw with Jimmy Hood towards the end of his career. But last year, he was just so good at the start of the year that I'm not counting him out of the championship fight yet. I still think he is the best driver in the series in my opinion. Even though Cameron Atwood went and won 5 races last year, I'm not certain that Cameron Atwood is going to back that up just because he doesn't have as much experience as Randall Woods. I think Randall Woods will have a great season next year, and like I said, when we go to Belltown, his name will be talked about.
Certainly, I certainly agree with that. Woods, a lot of people, we all talk about Diego, but Woods is actually, the active all-time wins leader right now with 26 wins, only 6 away from his father. He's proven time and time again that he is one of the best in the sport, and it's pretty impossible to count him out, when it comes to race day. But you talked about Randall Woods and the Windows 300. And that brings up an interesting talking point about the 14th annual Windows 300 and talk about the star studded field that we have in that race. So, of course, we have, all the ASCA stars fighting for the sport's biggest prize. But then when you bring over a 2-time Circle K Cup Series champion, a 2-time Smithfield Cup Series champion, you bring up the reigning Craftsman champ making a start. Um, this race has the potential to be something truly special. And I want to ask you, Nick, because you obviously, you have experience covering the Circle K Cup Series. What do you think? Do you think that Jesse Price III and that Taylor Motorsports equipment, do you think he has a realistic shot to win this year's 300?
You could put Jesse Price. I've watched Jesse Price III race for a couple seasons, like at the track. You could put Jesse Price III in the worst car in the field, and he'd be running top 5. This dude is one of the most incredible drivers I've ever seen. Now, sure, you can say what you want about the NDRL talent not maybe being as high as the ASCA talent, but Jesse Price III, you can't knock a guy for being successful in a lower talent, let's say a lower talented series. We don't really know which series is more talented, but if we do say that the ASC is more talented than the NDRL, how are you going to knock a guy for winning 2 titles and at least about 12 races and the Circle K Cup Series? Like what more do you want him to do? He's succeeding, and like I said, he is one of the most incredible drivers I've ever seen. He's 45 years old, and he still looks like he's 25. Like he just came out and he's like at his peak, but he's 20 years older than that. And if Taylor Motorsports is an incredible team in the NDRL. They have had some great races with Ryan Taylor in the ASCA. Taylor looked really strong in the Windows 300 last year, and I think you put Jesse Price III in that car. If he doesn't finish top 5, it's not a success for that team. It'll be his first ASCA start. They've got a different package. Computer Motor Speedway is obviously not the easiest track to learn, but I don't see a reason why he doesn't go out there and has a shot to win this race unless he gets caught up in some wreck early on, or maybe he could go out there in 10 laps, smack the wall, and wreck himself. He's 45 years old, like I said, doesn't have the experience as all these ASCA drivers. He is the underdog, but it's very weird calling Jesse Price III an underdog. It's like an upset that is going to happen. But I don't see a reason why he doesn't have a chance to win this race. And like you said, this Windows 300 it's already like written down in the history books as the best one yet, with all the talent that is going to be in this race. You could take Jesse Price III probably out of the race and it would still be the most talented. But that he's there for one reason, and that's the win. From what I've heard, it's the only race he's running the whole year and probably in his whole career in the ASCA. So he's going to give it 200% to win that race. And as long as Taylor Motorsports, brings the car back they had last year, they're going to be someone to beat. And they're going to be someone that the whole ASCA garage is going to be watching throughout the weekend.
Exactly, exactly. That's a really good assessment of it. Price is going to give something to these ASCA kids. They think Norm Lester's old at 37. Price can be out there at 45 and driving circles around these young guys. So it'll certainly be interesting to see how he does in that race. Now, another big storyline, of course, we mentioned him a little bit earlier, but Cameron Atwood, the star of last season. How can you not talk about him? 5 victories, a modern era record, 10 top fives, 13 top 10s, over 660 laps led, 2 poles, and of course, the championship. Becoming another champion in the sports modern era at the age of 27. Now he's 28. He's a year older. He's got that experience. He's got a fat new contract that goes into effect in 2025 that will tie him as the highest paid driver in the sport. But the question is, at TJ Barrymore Racing, can Atwood pull out a performance like he did last year and defend his championship?
I really like Cameron Atwood a lot. You know, Throughout his whole career, I was always telling people, you give this guy a ride and he's going to succeed. And look what he did last year. Champion at 27 years old, 5 wins, most in a season. Oh, like you said, over 600 laps led. How is he not the favorite to win the title next year? But I already said who my favorite was. I think it's Diego Orti, and I'm not going to change that because of this. But, I am a little worried about Cameron Atwood next year. And that is I feel like that's kind of crazy to say after the season he just put together. But CJ Barrymore Racing has 2 other cars, Ryan Dixon, who has 5 career wins, just as many as Atwood had last season. And then you have Barrymore, who has 4, which is even less than Atwood had last season. And I have a hard time believing that Cameron Atwood is just that much more talented than those two. It could be. I don't know what goes on over at CJ Barrymore Racing behind the closed doors, who gets what equipment. But I just feel like that he's going to take a step down next year, and we're going to see, hopefully, I've said this for years, that Barrymore and Dixon are going to step it up, but maybe Atwood just exposed them last year. But I just feel like Atwood had such a good season last year that it's almost impossible to back it up. And he's probably sitting in his house right now with that beautiful new mansion he's probably bought with that all the money he's about to make, all the money he deserves. By the way, he deserves to be the most paid driver in the ASCA. 28 years old, and he put together probably the best season in Ajax Cup Series history. He deserves the money, but the season was so good. It's like, how can you replicate that? Like, do you really think he can go on and win 6 or 7 races next year? Finish in the top 10 15 times, lead like 800 laps. I mean, sure, he can win the title again, but and that's a fantastic, if he wins the title. But it's like almost impossible to say that if he wins the title next year, that this upcoming season was better than last season just because of how good the numbers were. And I just feel like that I just feel like it's a really hard season to replicate again. I do think he takes a step down, and that's not because, he's like not the underdog anymore. People are looking over him. I just think that what he did last year was so impressive that I don't think himself can even top it. And if he can, I'm ready to see it, because I've always said this guy has talent, and if you put him in a good car, he's going to win races. I never thought he would win a championship. Never in my life would I think the Cameron Atwood would be a champion. And I don't think a lot of people did, and that's probably part of the reason why he had such a chip on his shoulder last year, was just proving everyone wrong. And I really am glad that CJ Barrymore Racing gave this guy a chance, because he definitely deserved it. And I mean, I'm sure they're extremely happy with it now. But I just feel like it's so hard to have a season that good, especially in the season after you have a great season like that. I just feel like there's going to be a little bit of a championship hangover, and I feel like Barrymore and Dixon might catch up a little bit next year. But like I said, those guys, maybe they're just overhyped, and Atwood showed them up. But I believe Barrymore and Dixon have talent. I just I really don't know about Atwood. I'm kind of worried about him. I still think that he's going to finish probably top 5 in points, have a couple wins, few wins, maybe 4, but I just find it hard to see him putting up numbers like that again next season.
Yeah, that's a pretty good assessment on the situation. And to kind of follow up on that whole CJ Barrymore racing dynamic, there was a report in the offseason that Chris Barrymore, obviously CJ Barrymore's son, who's making $11 million a season, while Cameron Atwood is still on the final year of his original $5 million contract that he signed with the team. Barrymore kind of felt like he was being treated unfairly and that he wanted to be treated as the number one driver. Now, do you think that that whole dynamic of Barrymore fighting to be the team leader and basically TJ Barrymore Racing trying to please both drivers, how do you think that'll affect Atwood's performance this upcoming season?
Well, first off, I'm sorry, Chris Barrymore. There's no way that you should be treated as the number one driver after Cameron Atwood just put up the greatest numbers, the greatest season in Ajax Cup Series history. Just because you make more money doesn't mean that you should be treated as the number one driver. And that's why I respect Ryan Dixon. Dixon didn't come out and say, excuse me, Dixon didn't come out and say anything like this because he knows he has to be better. He knows now what that equipment can do. And I think we're going to see a better season now to Dixon next year because I think he knows that, he might be on the hot seat now after what Atwood did. And same with Barrymore. It's hard to say that Barrymore would be on the hot seat with his dad as a team owner, but, CJ Barrymore knows what his cars can do now after what Atwood just did. So I feel like that puts both of them on the hot seat. My advice for Barrymore, this might sound crazy. I think he needs to leave CJ Barrymore Racing. I think if he ventures away from his father, he is more likely to see more success. I feel like he is under so much pressure trying to please his father that it's actually hurting him. And I think if he can get away from his father's team, this is just like an example. I'm not going to say this is what he should do, but let's say that he replaces Norm Lester. I feel like he'll be a lot more successful at Michael White Racing because he doesn't have that added pressure of, pleasing his father. For Ryan Dixon, I'm not really worried about Dixon. I've always thought this guy had potential to do what Atwood did really last season. I don't know. I feel like Dixon is a veteran of the series, and it's very hard to say that as he's not even 30, but like he's been around for so long that I feel like he knows what it takes to get better. But he had a really, really bad season last year, with only 6 top tens. So like I said, he's got to do better. He should feel like he's on the hot seat. I think that'll help him have a better season next year. But if he has numbers like that again, CJ Barrymore's got to look elsewhere because if Atwood can come out here and win 5 races and a title, you cannot stick with these guys that are only winning 1 race every 2 years. And I really think that Dixon should feel in the hot seat, and I think Barrymore should feel in the hot seat as well, especially if he's going to come out here and say that he deserves to be treated better. I think that they should treat all their drivers equally, but if anyone's going to be the number one driver, it's got to be the defending champion.
100%. 100%. It's definitely going to be interesting to follow the CJ Barrymore dynamic throughout the campaign this upcoming season. Now, another guy that we need to talk about that's been there really close these past, basically the past half decade, but just has not been able to get the job done is Todd Kidd. He has been so close. 2018 finishes 5th in points, 2019 5th in points, 2020 3rd in points, 2021 3rd in points, 2022 3rd in points, and then just last year 2nd in points, but no championships to show for it. Now, in the off season, he got engaged. He's got a kid on the way. He's 28 years old, which sounds crazy because it just yesterday it seems like he was a rookie 20-year-old entering the series. Now he's 28. Now he's a veteran. He's got tons of experience under his belt. He's been so close these past few years. Will this year finally be Todd Kidd's time to win an Ajax Cup championship?
Well, I'm gonna say no because I already told you that Diego Ortiz gonna go out here and win the title. But Todd Kidd is an interesting case. He's got all the characteristics of a driver that you think should have a championship won by now. But it just seems like every year you get to the last 5 races of the year and everything, the whole season, the whole first 12 races, 10 races, they build a championship run. And then it seems like he just has a really bad stretch to end the year and it all goes downhill. And those first 10 to 12 races are just forgotten about. And you're just saying, well, Todd Kidd blew it again. You know, I really don't know if Todd Kidd is ever going to win a championship. I thought about this actually coming into this podcast because I want to talk about Todd Kidd. I don't know really. He's at a spot where he's like, he's going to win races, but he's not a championship contender, even though he, like I said, has all the characteristics to win a championship. He's just not there yet. And he's been in the Cup Series for so long. How long do you have these expectations for him? Because he, like you said, he's finished 5th a couple times, 2nd last year, and 3rd the year before. Like, I mean, he's getting better through each season, but I'm a little worried about him because I feel like that he, at the end of every season, he doesn't put everything together and someone else always outperforms him at the end of the year, and that's who goes on and wins the title. I I feel like something the Todd Kidd has an issue with, and this might just be my opinion, but I feel like he gets comfortable as the season goes on. And when something happens in that last 5 race stretch, it completely throws the whole team off guard. And when they fall a couple spots in points and maybe they're only 10 points back, but they're in 3rd, they start panicking and they try new things and they don't work, or they're maybe Todd Kidd drives too aggressively and he ends up, putting it in the wall at like the Stone Yard, or he tries at the Fastenal 200 to, drive through the pack, try to win the race and maybe make a bad block and wreck the field and himself. I feel like that he gets comfortable and then panics when something goes wrong there at the end of the year. And he's really got to learn how to put a complete season together, because in a full season's points format, we saw Diego Ortiz do it, but he's a different caliber driver. You have to put a full season together. You can't put one half of a season together and expect to just, kind of, I don't know what the word really for this is, but like ease off, I guess, on the other half and expect to win a title in a full season's format. That's why the points don't get reset after 8 races. From race 1, you were racing, and when green flag drops for the Ajax 200, you're racing for a title. And I feel like the Todd Kidd gets comfortable there being up in the top of the standings. Like, if this keeps happening, we're going to win the title. And then, something catches them off guard. Maybe they blow a tire somewhere, or they have engine issues, or they get in a wreck, and then they fall back a little bit and they try too much to get what they lost back. That's just my assessment of it. I could be completely wrong. Todd Kidd could go out next year and suck the first 4 races of the year and then be great the last 12. But the point is, the guy's got to put a full season together if he wants to win a title. And until he can show me that he can do that, I don't think he's going to be a champion in this series. But he's certainly, like I said when I first started this take, has the characteristics to become a champion. He's shown it all over his whole career. He's just got to put it all together in one season. And he'll lift the trophy at Belltown one year. But right now, I'm not convinced that he is going to win a championship.
That's a really interesting point you make when it comes to Todd Kidd, and it kind of brings back the conversation that we were having just a few years ago with a very similar driver to Todd Kidd, ironically, who was also at Ronnie Woods Motorsports, who kept finishing in the top three in points and would be so close but wouldn't win the championship. That guy's name was Randall Woods. And Woods, of course, went to Michael White Racing once his contract expired with his father's team and won the championship the following season. So that makes you wonder, when it comes to Todd Kidd, his contract expires at the end of 2026. Maybe do you think that it'll take him leaving the 9 car and Ronnie Woods Motorsports to win a championship somewhere else?
That is actually a very good point. I really wasn't thinking about Randall Woods and, his statistics when it came to comparing Todd Kidd to a driver, but Todd Kidd has kind of followed Randall Woods' career so far. And really, other than Todd Kidd and Renner, when he wins his one race a year, we haven't really seen in the past years consistency of the rest of the Ronnie Woods Motorsports cars. Renner is the most under the radar driver, I think, in probably the entire ADRA. This guy finished top 5 in points last year, and he's done that multiple seasons, and you wouldn't know it. But he's not out there winning races. He's just kind of getting by, if you get what I'm saying. He wins a race a year to keep him relevant, and he is consistent enough to finish top 5 in points, but he's not out there competing for titles. Doug Bowden certainly wasn't out there competing for titles. Jimmy Hood, at the end of his career, struggled. Age certainly had to go into that. But we saw Jimmy Hood just a couple weeks ago in the Circle K200, and it looked like that he had been still driving. He went out there and finished second. Short's a plate race. Lots of things can happen. And then Shane Park, he looked pretty solid last year. I thought he was definitely an upgrade over Doug Bowden. He did win a race, which was great for him. And then you also have Ross Jackson coming in. Well, yeah, last year. Ross Jackson coming in last year, heading into a sophomore campaign this year. And Ross Jackson did not do anything at all last year that made me think, oh, this guy is going to go win multiple races and, be the future of Ronnie Woods Motorsports. He had 5 top 10s. That's solid for a rookie year. He won Rookie of the Year, which is good, but it wasn't like a groundbreaking season. Like, it wasn't anything crazy. So maybe you're right. Maybe Todd Kidd does have to get away from Ronnie Woods Motorsports because maybe they're not a championship level organization. I don't know where Todd Kidd would go, to be honest. Have a better shot. I feel like the 19 car, because Michael White Racing is going to ditch Norm Lester once his contract ends. I think Norm Lester could go out and win 5 races and it wouldn't matter. I think he's gone because you saw what they did to Dan Rogers. Now that was still absolutely ridiculous. He put together the best season of his entire career and you let him go. That's just, and then the guy you replace him with is not even on the team anymore. But I think maybe if Todd Kidd could head to Michael White Racing and do exactly what Randall Woods did. Maybe he ends up at Snoots Enterprises with teammates with Greg Healy. I mean, that would be crazy storylines if those two ended up as teammates. With they were rivals in the Craftsman Series, and it always felt like Todd Kidd had it over Greg Healy. And Healy, honestly, to me, has had a more successful Cup career just because he built Snoots Enterprises from the ground up to have his success, and he's a champion. But yeah, I maybe Todd Kidd does need to leave Ronnie Woods Motorsports because Randall Woods, 2-time champion, neither of his championships came with this team, and he was in the exact position that Todd Kidd's in now. I think the kid is best off at Ronnie Woods Motorsports right now. But who knows? Maybe in 3 seasons, Laquan Scranson has Dexter Andrews Motorsports as the best Chevy team, and maybe he's driving the 1 car, and him and Scranson are winning every single race. You never know. But that's something that we should definitely keep an eye out on starting this season is how Todd Kidd feels about a situation at Ronnie Woods Motorsports. I think that was a great thing to bring up because I really didn't think about that.
Exactly. That'll certainly be an intriguing situation to follow for sure. And then you also brought up Bryn Renner, and that brings me to the topic of silly season. And Bryn Renner is in a very sticky situation right now. We all know, of course, what Colin Ward did in the Craftsman Series for Ronnie Woods Motorsports last season, the most historic rookie season we've ever seen in ASCA history. And, they put him back in the Craftsman Series this season, but you almost have to assume that he will be cup racing in 2025 for Ronnie Woods Motorsports. And their other three drivers, Kidd, Park, and Jackson, are under contract through 2025. So that leaves Ben Renner as the odd man out on the 1 year deal. And Renner, he has 7 cup wins. He's a Windows 300, Ajax 200, Northern 200 winner. He's got the crown jewel sweep. He just doesn't have a championship, and he's very hit or miss. He can be very hot, very cold from season to season. I guess my question is, how sought after will Bryn Renner be in this upcoming free agency, and where do you think he ends up in 2025?
Well, with the season that Colin Ward just had in 2023, I don't think there's any way that you can keep Bryn Renner around if he follows that up this season. Like I said in my assessment, really, with the entire Ronnie Woods Motorsports team, is that Bryn Renner kind of just gets by. He gets a win every year and he's won every single crown jewel race, but he's not like a complete driver. He's not competing for championships, but he's always there. He's just getting by. And I think that Colin Ward gives you a better chance at winning a title because Bryn Renner, he's 32 years old and he's done pretty much the same thing for the past 5 seasons. Just win a random race and be there in the top 5 in the points standings. I've always been watching Bryn Renner, and thought this guy, he might do it next year just because he's always like like I said, in the top 5 of the points standings. But now that I really look at it, he just gets by. And what you said about Renner being high sought after, I don't think that any big team is going to look to take him. What I think happens with Bryn Renner, I definitely think he needs a cup team has to sign. He is a cup level driver. But I think a good spot for him is, and I'm not 100% certain on, actually, I'm going to have you clear this up before I make a prediction here. Well, who are the free agents heading into 2025?
Yeah, that is a very, very good question. Looking at that right now, the current free agents are Derek Lewis, Bryce Mann, Ryan Braun, Carson Schmidt, Devin Smith, Brent Renard, and Lucas Sambert.
Okay, so all those guys you mentioned do not deserve the rides they currently have, in my opinion. Ryan Braun, was a great driver. Maybe he keeps his ride, honestly, because Tico Bowden Motorsports, I don't really think has anyone to really replace him with, and he's not really a guy that's going to cause you any issues. He's going to get solid finishes here and there. He's going to stay out of trouble. Devin Smith, okay, maybe you keep Devin Smith over Ryan Braun just because he's younger and has more potential. I don't see both of those guys coming back. Carson Schmidt did show a lot of potential last year, but it just seems like everyone on that 12 car struggled, regardless of what they have done in the Craftsman series. I don't really see a reason. Actually, I don't really see a reason to get rid of Carson Schmidt because I feel he's been a little more successful than the prior drivers of that 12 car. He did win a pole last year, and he showed some top 5 speed in quite a few races. He didn't finish there, but he did show speed. Derek Lewis, I know Derek pretty well outside of racing, but he is he's not really. I mean, with Scranton winning 2 races last year, and Lewis has never showed any potential like that. I don't really know how you keep him around. Sam Bear, it is a new team, and I feel like maybe if you want to keep the same driver to build that team up, you keep him. But I don't really see. I feel like they should move on. And Bryce, man, I like did he? I don't even think he finished in the top 10 last year. He's out of there. There's no way he comes back unless he somehow turns everything around next year. So why I say as for the free agents is I think Renner is a perfect guy to go into a smaller team and, you know, get them finishes and, have better chances at getting better finishes to where you can get better payouts and, take that money and help build your team. I think Renner is a good guy to slot into a smaller team because he's not going to tear the car up. He showed how consistent he is these past couple years. And kind of like Ryan Braun, he's kind of like a safe driver to pull it in. So if you're like developing a driver in the Craftsman series, then he's like the perfect guy to plug in your cup team until they're ready. Like maybe you put, okay, so let's say maybe that Orti Bros Racing wants to, get rid of Carson Schmidt. Maybe you sign Bryn Renner to a 1-year deal to drive that 12 car until Graham Darty is ready to move up if that's where he chooses to go. Or maybe you choose to put him in the 1 for a season until a guy like, I don't know, maybe Marcus Edwards, maybe Edwards next year, he's shown showed a lot of progression last year, but maybe he needs 1 more year after next year to really certify you that he's capable of being a cup driver. Maybe you plug him in for 1 year. I think Renner deserves a cup ride, but Colin Ward, like you said, had an incredible year last year, and I really praise Ryan Woods Motorsports for keeping him and Craftsman for another season because he is just going to get more experience. He's going to be even more developed, and when he comes into Cup his rookie year, you would think that he's going to be ready, and he could put together the best rookie season of any Ajax Cup drivers we've ever seen. But I just think Renner's time is over at Ronnie Woods Motorsports unless he comes out and finally does something like Todd Kidd did these past couple years. He's the old one there, and he's, like I said, he's just been getting by, and I feel like eventually you just got to cut that off and look somewhere else. I think Colin Ward is going to be ready for Cup after next year. Like it's like you kind of think he could go now. I mean, yeah, I would be rushing him, but like if you were in an emergency situation where you had to call someone up, I think Ward would be ready. And I think after 2 years of Craftsman experience, Ward's definitely ready. So I think Renner is the guy that you want at, maybe a Tico Bald Motorsports, Dexter Andrews, or maybe even over at Orchidi Bros Racing that you fill in because, he's not really going to cause you any issues. And I like I said, though, I just feel like that his time is kind of done at Ryan Woods Motorsports. He's really got to race hard this year and prove he deserves that ride if he wants to keep it over Colin Ward, who shocked everyone last year.
Certainly, certainly. Renner's certainly going to have his work cut out for him if he wants to stay in that number 48 in 2024 that he has held for a decade plus. But now we head to the final topic of this podcast, and that is, of course, previewing the upcoming week of racing that we have in the ASCA. Finally, after a little over 60 days, the ASCA will be back on Tuesday with the Intel Shootout. Then on Wednesday, we have the Smithfield Fast 9 and Ajax 200 STP pole qualifying. Thursday, we have the Eris Duels. Friday, we have the Craftsman season opener, the 10th annual Napa Auto Parts 100 at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And then Saturday, it's the big one, the 11th annual Ajax 200 at noon Eastern time. So obviously a lot of racing this upcoming week. And I just want to give you this opportunity, Nick, to give us your ones to watch, the guys who you think will be the ones to beat in the Ajax 200 on Saturday.
All right, so first off, I gotta say how excited I am for Speed Weeks. Of course, can't wait to get back up in the booth and get with Jimmy Hood and Tico Bowden and just enjoy some great ASCA racing. We're all great friends up there, and it really just feels like kind of like me and you just talking right now, kind of a little informally. We just go up there and talk about what we see for 3 or 4 hours, and it's always fun up there with them. Um, I just can't wait to get back up there in the booth and watch some great racing. Of course, the package was changed a little bit. I think Charles, you'll have a little more insight of what was changed. But from what I hear, they took off the air ducts and on the front of the car, and then they lowered the spoiler, I think, by a couple inches. Um,
Yep.
which I don't, yeah. So I don't really think any of that is going to have a big effect on the racing. The package last year was absolutely incredible. It made me feel like I was back watching the Circle K 200 in Sevierville, and that's what it should have felt like because that's the package that they modeled their plate package last year off of the NDRL package. Now, of course, they were a little concerned with the safety of the drivers and the money being spent on torn up race cars. But we saw that horrible package in season 6. Um, where everyone just got spread out and 5 cars finished the Ajax 200. I think that Bob Halvert has to realize, and I've tried telling him this face to face, these drivers are going to tear up cars regardless of what racing package is on. So I really hope this one puts on the racing we saw last Speed Weeks because that was one of the best Speed Weeks in a really long time. We saw a lot of drivers making moves, and I felt like that there wasn't as many wrecks as I expected them to be. I mean, there was obviously quite a few big ones, but there wasn't 5 cars finishing the Ajax 200 like we had with the prior package. So ones to watch this week. Randall Woods always has been great in the Ajax 200, and he finally won it last year. He's going to be someone that you definitely got to keep an eye out. Will he go back to back after going so many years winless in that race? Yeah, keep an eye on Diego Urquidy, of course, and Todd Kidd and Greg Healy. Probably the 3 best plate drivers in the sport, in my opinion. I'm not, the entry list still isn't out yet, of course. But I did see, Charles, that you said Adam Petty Jr. would be entering in a Taylor Motorsports car. It sounds like the upset special to me. Adam Petty Jr. has had a ton of success in the Ajax 200. He hasn't won it, but he's had a ton of great finishes. And you're putting him in the NDRL's best plate team. That's won 3 of the 4 Circle K 200s. So that sounds like upset special. And another driver that I think, Jared Ayers, of course. He's always really strong at Ajax Super Speedway. But another guy that I really think could pull off the upset this year. And this is going to be crazy that I'm going to say this. But I just have a weird feeling in me that Devin Smith it could pull off the upset. I don't know why. I really don't know why. It's kind of just a feeling I have. We all get these types of feelings about certain things. I just feel like that he is going to, kind of ride in the back and everyone's going to take each other out. When we get to about 10 cars left, Devin Smith's just going to be in the top 5 and maybe he somehow wins. That's my upset pick. I don't know why. I just get a feeling that Devin Smith, for some reason, is going to have, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't have any explanation for it. I just feel like he's got to, put up a FU to Michael White Racing for letting him go. I mean, he kind of deserved to be let go, but, he's got that chip on his shoulder. So have an eye on him. He could wreck 5 laps in. He could cause a big one, and you all can laugh at me next week on the podcast. It's fine with me. It's not really it's not really a prediction. It's just a weird feeling that I had. But like I said, Randall Woods, Todd Kidd, Greg Healy, Diego Urquidy, best plate racers. Got to have an eye on them. Nic Urquidy as well. Can't forget him. He is definitely had a lot of bad luck in this race. So it'd be awesome to see him win, if I'd be honest with you. And he's coming off a winless year, so he might feel like he has to turn something around. And like I said, upset special is Adam Petty Jr. You're putting one of the better plate racers, the more underrated plate racers, and one of the best cars in the field. He is going to be there at the end. He is so good at avoiding wrecks, so good at being at the right place in the right time. He's going to be there in the end too. So that's the upset special. And in the Craftsman series, I'll even talk about the Craftsman series. Don't know that what Cup guys are going to be racing, but Sean Wooden brings the experience, of course. Tommy Woods has won this race before. It's a lot of unknowns, but and Adam Page Jr. also in that race. He finally broke through and won last year in the Craftsman series, won at West Virginia. Couldn't have wanted a better track. But he'll be a factor in that race. But like I feel like Toby Beckett is the guy you could watch out in that race as well. He had a really quiet season last year. He got a win. He got 9 top 10s. Maybe not a driver to win the Napa 100, but a driver to watch throughout the season that may have flew under your radar last year just because of how good Colin Ward really was. Toby Beckett had a great year last year as well. But if we're going to make official predictions on this thing, I know you already have in your articles. But my official predictions for this, I think I'm going to take Toby Beckett to win the Napa 100. I don't know why, but I feel like that he's a guy to watch this year. And then for the Ajax 200, I'm probably going to go with Greg Healy. I think Greg Healy is probably the second best plate racer in the series behind Diego Urquidy. I think he's going to get what it takes to, win that race and add even another great achievement to his resume. So those are my predictions. And like I said, Adam Petty Jr., upset special, bet wisely.
Certainly. Those are some really, really interesting predictions. And I think they have a really good chance of coming true. You just talked about it. Beckett was really, really solid last season. Just kind of went under the radar. And Greg Healy, he led 66 laps in this race in 2020. A lot of people forget about that, but he had a pit road penalty late that put him to the back. And then Renner took the lead, and the rest is history. But he is certainly underrated. He won the shootout in his duel in 2021 as well. So he is certainly going to be a factor as well. And I know we're up against it, but one final question for you, Nic. Obviously, you have disclosed that your Cup Championship prediction is Diego Urquidy for 2024. But with arguably the most competitive Craftsman Series field in 2024, who do you have taking home the Craftsman title?
Without a question, I got Colin Ward. I mean, he is still looks like he's on the best team, because like I said, Toby Beckett had success last year as well. And those two guys, are on the same team. But yeah, I think it's Colin Ward again. When you're that young and you have that impressive a season, maybe it's a case, like I said, with Cameron Atwood, where it was such a good season that he can't improve. But like, I feel like that he was still so good last year. Like, if he even took a step down, he's still probably going to win the title. That's probably an obvious pick. So, I think that Colin Ward's going to win the title. But, a couple guys to watch is going to be Graham Darty. I mean, the dude won a race at 17 years old. I mean, he's still in high school when he won a Craftsman Series race, and I think it was his second start. How that guy is, he's going to be a superstar. I can tell you that. Just, I hope he doesn't get rushed up into the Cup Series because he's so young, and they're going to be like, oh, we need a 19-year-old in the Cup Series. And then you saw how that works out. And then obviously I already said it, Toby Beckett and even Marcus Edwards. Toby Beckett and Marcus Edwards, two guys that really flew under people's radars last year because of how good Colin Ward was. If Colin Ward doesn't win the title, I think a Chevy is going to win the title in the Craftsman Series. But if it's not Colin Ward, it's going to be one of those two. They looked great last year as well. And it's, like you said, the Craftsman Series has a ton of talent. And it's getting to a point where, you look at the Ajax Cup Series and you think, oh, wow, all these guys are going to be so talented. And now you got guys like Derek Lewis, Carson Schmidt, Devin Smith, Ryan Braun, they're in contract years. They haven't done much with their Cup career. Now you're in the point in the Craftsman Series where there's so many guys that could replace them. So all these guys on contract years should feel on the hot seat because there are a lot of good prospects in the Craftsman Series. And like you said, it's going to be probably one of the best seasons ever for that series.
Exactly. That's a really good way to wrap this thing up. Thank you all for tuning in to the first edition of the ASCA Weekly Podcast. Just one quick reminder, of course, on your way out, if you need something to keep you awake, go to Rowdy Energy, shop at their website, use the Linktree link in the Ajax Cup Series Instagram description to get there. And also, of course, if you're buying diecast, Circle B diecast, Plan B sales, they have all your needs. Use coupon code ASC at checkout to save 20% on to get free shipping on any order, $20 or more. So that is it for this first edition of the ASCA Weekly Podcast. Thank you again, Nic, for joining me tonight. Yes, it's going to be an incredible Speed Weeks. I feel like an incredible season, and hopefully we will be back to recap all the action for you next week. So take it easy. We'll see you next week.